G'day, my name is Nick, and for those who haven't met me before, I've been a member of the Congregation of Hope here for about 5 years now. So, we've reached the second chapter in this series of Growing Up with Timothy, where we move from the context of a new way of seeing to a new way of being. We have heard Matt's introduction, a call to maturity, Chloe on laying binaries down, Martin on merciful wrath, and Hannah last week about dying to live. So, this talk, I hope, will serve as a transition where we will shift the focus from the more thought-based aspects of Timothy to the more practical applications. And this talk will cover the practical side quite generally. But the talks after this will focus a bit more on some of the other practical aspects. So, for today, I'll read the passage, give it a little bit of context, introduce our theme, and then provide some of my interpretation. So, today's reading is 1 Timothy chapter 3, verses 1 to 13. And I'd encourage you to read this from your own Bibles if you have them on you. So, here is a trustworthy saying: whoever aspires to be an overseer desires a noble task. Now the overseer is to be above reproach, faithful to his wife, temperate, self-controlled, respectable, hospitable, able to teach, not given to drunkenness, not violent but gentle, not quarrelsome, not a lover of money. He must manage his own family well and see that his children obey him, and he must do so in a manner worthy of full respect. If anyone does not know how to manage his own family, how can he take care of God's church? He must not be a recent convert, or he may become conceited and fall under the same judgment as the devil. He must also have a good reputation with outsiders, so that he will not fall into disgrace and into the devil's trap. In the same way, deacons are to be worthy of respect, sincere, not indulging in much wine, and not pursuing dishonest gain. They must keep hold of their deep truths of the faith with a clear conscience. They must first be tested, and then if there is nothing against them, let them serve as deacons. In the same way, the women are to be worthy of respect, not malicious talkers, but temperate and trustworthy in everything. A deacon must be faithful to his wife and must manage his children and his household well. Those who have served well gain an excellent standing and great assurance in their faith in Christ Jesus. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. So, the context of this passage. So, as you would have heard in earlier sessions, the book is a letter to Timothy from Paul, who is giving him guidance on running the church and particularly trying to help shield the church away from any false teachers who are out of step with the gospel, where this wrong way of seeing could lead to a wrong way of being and a way that's out of step with the gospel. In today's reading, Paul is setting out the qualifications of church leaders, those particularly of overseers or bishops in some other versions, the ones tasked with protecting and watching over the church, and deacons, those who serve. Paul lists qualities of both of these positions of leadership and is very specific. And at first glance, it appears to be some sort of purity code, a level of perfection I personally see as being challenging to achieve, especially when he is mentioning being above reproach. And as well as that, I've never felt I was an aspiring overseer or deacon in the official sense. So how does this passage apply to me and those who know Jesus and those who feel called to know Jesus? When I asked myself these things, and from doing some research, I found that this passage invites all of those who read it to a new way of being human, should you choose to accept it fully. One that highlights a call to holiness, a call to the cross of Jesus hidden amongst this purity code, and it insists our actions matter. The helpful thing about Paul is he's advising Timothy due to his experience in how these actions matter, in his own experience of having a church to look after. And he leads Timothy to this learning style of living rather than lectures. And to best illustrate how our actions matter, here is a clip from my favourite TV show, The Simpsons.
Yellow.
Dad, I'm calling about the school talent show.
Don't worry, I know it's tonight.
No, Dad, I broke my last saxophone reed and I need you to get me a new one.
Isn't this the kind of thing your mother's better at?
I called her. She's not home. I also tried Mr. Flanders, Aunt Patty, Aunt Selma, Dr. Hibbert, Reverend Lovejoy, and that nice man who caught the snake in our basement.
Wow, and after them, out of all the people in the world, you chose me. Uh-huh. Yeah, number 4.5 reed. Got it. Woo! Just in the nick of... beer. Hurry, Mo, hurry. I've only got 5 minutes till the music store closes.
Well, why don't you go there first?
Hey, do I tell you how to do your job?
Sorry, Homer.
You know, if you tip the glass, there won't be so much foam on top.
Sorry, Homer.
To put it simply, Homer had a choice. Go to Moe's Tavern for a beer or get Lisa's saxophone reed in good time. If this episode wasn't aired in 1991, I would say, spoiler alert. But what happens is Homer is late delivering the reed to Lisa, and she ends up embarrassing herself in front of her peers because of the horrible notes her broken saxophone reed produces during her performance. And this is one of the reasons why I love The Simpsons, not just because of its nostalgic traits or its ability to make me laugh out loud, but because each episode is beautifully crafted and to its audience and teaches its audience something. In this case, it was that Homer's actions may not have mattered to him, but they mattered to Lisa. If you watch The Simpsons, Homer, like me, and I would hazard some of you out there listening to this right now, are constantly having to relearn how our actions matter. We only need to look recently at our voting for the mayor. What you choose to put or not to put on that piece of paper matters for the outcome of who will lead our city of London. Do I need to mention the actions Jesus made throughout his life, let alone the greatest action of all he did, which was dying on the cross because he loves us, and how those things affect us and our world even today? Maybe we can save a bit of that for another time. So let's look at this passage more specifically. The list starts with an individual being above reproach. And like I said, this feels heavy, to be above reproach. But the emphasis in the irreproachability does not necessarily mean perfection. I believe if Paul meant this, he would have used without defect. And if he did say this, a suitable individual probably would not be found to fill these positions. What I believe he's referring to here is it is somebody whose actions strongly align with the views of the gospel. By that, I mean they closely follow those actions Jesus encouraged those who follow him to do. A way of living that is so pure that so few would be able to say that they made the wrong decision. And this sets the precedence for the next 20 other qualities listed through the passage. I also want to make note that Paul does not mention popularity or being assertive or pushy or even being voted on when speaking about who becomes a deacon or overseer. It is their actions alone that make them stand out as leaders. It is how they serve others and conduct themselves that make them stand out. This is one reason why Paul may have warned Timothy in verse 6 that leaders should not be new converts. First, their action must speak for them, and they need to know the new way of being, their new way of being rather. They must learn how to direct their actions for the good of others, and as verse 9 says, to keep hold of the deep truths of the faith with a clear conscience. The specific point he warns about in new believers is that some can be susceptible to conceit or pride, where they let go of these deep truths of the faith for personal gain. Paul suggests that this is a kind of thing the enemy often exploits and can lead to the focus of their actions being away from the gospel, making them the very thing that Paul wants to shield the church from. But whilst I was reading this, I also feel it necessary to remember that I am vulnerable to this, and that it is not just new converts who fall susceptible to pride when they are positions of power. It is about their spiritual maturity. It's about our spiritual maturity that allows us to see past these traps. Generally, the flow of criteria in this list moves from personal to church life, from domestic to official functions, where Paul is promoting a way of being human that holistically calls people to ensure they are conscious of how they speak and act, both in public and in private. For the world is not changed for the better, heaven is not brought closer to earth, and we are not fully human if we are splitting ourselves to act as one person in one situation and one in another. Paul alludes to this in verse 5, signaling that if an individual's actions mean that they cannot manage themselves at home, how are they supposed to manage bigger things like the church? Positive action starts at home and moves outwards, and it shouldn't take from it either, or any other aspect of your life that shares a similar importance. If you want to know if you fit the qualities in this passage and want to know what effect your actions have, then ask others. You don't necessarily have to have a wife or kids to answer this for you. You can ask your housemates, your family, your friends, whoever. And I believe Paul encouraged us to check ourselves in the mirror of others, where the effect of our actions are better understood, and to ask the question, have my actions been making this world a better place, as Christ calls those who follow him to do? Paul also specifically mentions a group of people in verse 7 who are important when considering this. And it is that of the outsider, or those who may not be following Jesus. The way at which someone following Jesus takes action must be that even an outsider, if you would, could see the morality in your lifestyle that incites confidence and respect in a Christian. In fact, there is a song called "They Will Know We Are Christians," and the chorus is, "They will know we are Christians by our love." Don't let your actions speak to those just like you. Let them speak to those not like you, especially in your faith. Jesus' mission on earth did not just focus on those who believed. As a Christian, I believe we are all a part of this thing that is bigger than us, the body of Christ. To best be a part of this body is to learn how to live intentionally and in alignment with the gospel. And it is passages like today's that serve as a compass to guide us to the areas in our life that need attention, and also could provide a way to be encouraged by the points that we are already doing well in our lives. And as I draw to a close, maybe you might want to think about where you feel your actions have been making a difference. Give thanks to God for that. Maybe even ask yourself, where am I struggling to make positive action happen? Pray to God for guidance on this. Being part of the body and a follower of Jesus isn't a secret club. It is a call to the cross, to die to yourself and embrace a new way of being where the full realization of our actions matter. And I'd encourage you I've been using this phrase of a new way of being, and I initially didn't think of it as a new way of being because I thought I might be doing these things all the time, but I do think that I can always do better, and I believe that there is a way of being that I'm not quite there yet. These actions can help shape things. You are beautiful and powerful, and you can shape things, not just impacting yourself, but those around you and the world. So I pray that you would go out and be fully human and make some decisions to see the world better and help you to bring heaven on earth.